McLaren joins Red Bull in the social media war, but its key weapon is Piastri. A Race Fans article by Keith Collantine. Max Verstappen paid Lando Norris the ultimate compliment with his no-holds-barred defending in Austria. The Red Bull driver would not have wasted such a move on a driver he did not regard as a genuine threat. He didn't make Charles Leclerc fight that hard over the same win 2 years ago, even with a smaller championship lead, because he knew better days lay ahead. Sure enough, Leclerc and Ferrari didn't win another race that year. But the Norris situation is different. Aside from the extreme outlier track of Monaco, Verstappen and Norris monopolised the top 2 places at every round since the Chinese Grand Prix heading into last weekend, and they would have done so again in Austria had Verstappen not squeezed Norris too hard heading into turn 3 on the 64th lap. 2 years ago, Red Bull knew there was much more to come from the RB18, which was aerodynamically sound but overweight. Since then, the opposition has closed in and everyone, Red Bull included, are chasing much smaller gains. Quote, "We expect it to be very, very close between now and the rest of the year," said team principal Christian Horner before last weekend's race. Verstappen has amassed a healthy championship lead, but there are still many points to play for in Formula One's longest season ever, which reaches its halfway point this weekend. Norris moved into second place in the championship at the Spanish Grand Prix, and though he lay 69 points off Verstappen heading into Austria, there were still 396 available. For much of last year, Verstappen was so far ahead in the standings that not only did he not need to fight hard for points against other drivers, his rivals knew going wheel to wheel against him was usually a waste of time. But right now, every point matters. McLaren are matching Red Bull for single lap performance to within a narrow margin of error. What's more, McLaren still have a development advantage over Red Bull under F1's performance handicapping aerodynamic testing regulations. Red Bull have consistently led the Constructors' Championship and therefore are entitled to less development time. Verstappen is therefore not going to let a single point slip his grasp until his 4th driver's title is locked down. And it will not be lost on Norris or McLaren that while Verstappen copped the penalty in Austria, he won the day, adding another 10 points to his tally. No doubt questions have been asked internally about whether Norris could have got his car back into the race as Verstappen did, a point the driver conceded on Sunday evening. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella drew a pointed comparison between Verstappen's conduct last weekend and how he approached the 2021 championship fight with Hamilton. That contest wasn't only fought on the track, and nor is this one, and McLaren were clearly paying attention. Teams and drivers alike know that the first opportunity to present their side of a dispute occurs on the radio. Norris laid out his concerns over Verstappen's defending. Quote, "He reacted to my move, you're not allowed to do that," he said after their first skirmish on lap 55. He blamed another late move in the braking zone by Verstappen after he went off at turn 3. Quote, "He can't keep moving after I've moved, it's just dangerous. We're going to have a big shunt. He forced me to go wide." His race engineer, Will Joseph, reiterated those messages to press their case home with the race director. Meanwhile, Red Bull were doing the same, Verstappen accusing Norris of, quote, dive-bombing him, the same term Zhou Guanyu used to describe Fernando Alonso hitting him at the same corner earlier in the race. Quote, "It's not clever," remarked race engineer Giampiero Lambiesi. While those remarks were intended to sway the stewards one way or another, even after the dust had settled, both sides are still seeking to sway opinion. Red Bull did so through the motorsport consultant Helmut Marko's regular column, in which he complained about Norris, quote, whining. Marko also admitted he has, quote, always appreciated Lando Norris, having unsuccessfully tried to sign him in the past, which adds even more piquancy to his rivalry. With an eye towards Norris's home race this weekend, Red Bull fanned the flames of hostility on their social media feeds. McLaren used theirs to pointedly share footage of an analysis of Verstappen's defensive moves, which argued, among other things, that Norris made a legitimate pass on lap 63, which his rival only reversed by driving off the track. That was Anthony Davidson's analysis on Sky Sports. Having not fought for a championship since Lewis Hamilton drove for them, there was always going to be questions over whether McLaren were prepared to go toe-to-toe with competitors as fierce as Red Bull to claim a title. So far they have given as good as they get, but compared to the benchmark of 2021, things haven't truly got nasty yet. To take a notorious example, Red Bull went to extraordinary lengths to seek an additional punishment for Hamilton after his collision with Verstappen at the British Grand Prix 3 years ago. Reserve driver Alexander Albon was sent to conduct simulated runs through Copse Corner in a bid to generate evidence Red Bull hoped they could use to pressure the stewards into increasing Hamilton's 10-second time penalty. That proved fruitless, but it also proved the lengths Red Bull are prepared to go to, which McLaren must be prepared to match. But in the contest between the two teams, McLaren appears to have one weapon which at the moment Red Bull don't have an answer for. And they can deploy it, not in the largely phony war of race engineer rows and social media tit-for-tats, but where it matters, on the track. McLaren's upswing in form coincided with a slump in Sergio Perez's performances. The second Red Bull driver began the season well with 3 podiums from the first 5 races, but he's been nowhere since then. In the last 6 rounds, he hasn't spent a single lap inside the top 4. The only useful service he's provided to Verstappen in that time is collecting a grid penalty in Canada in order to avoid triggering a safety car appearance. Perez's less experienced opposite number at McLaren, however, is increasingly a force to be reckoned with. Oscar Piastri has had a pair of second places in the past 5 races and would have had more had it not been for qualifying penalties at Imola, an impeding incident largely out of his control, and the Red Bull Ring, a borderline track limits call. Verstappen has proven himself capable of fighting off one McLaren, but unlike in 2021, Perez is not playing a useful number 2 role, and Austria's sprint race showed the kind of two-pronged attack Verstappen can expect more of from this weekend, where McLaren were in superb form 12 months ago. Let me know what you think, guys. Thanks for listening.